So one Sunday afternoon, we were just here at home having a normal life, and I had been noticing earlier, there's some things that weren't quite right in my body, but how a lot of us do, we just ignore it. But here my nose just started bleeding, and it did not stop. And in my gut, I knew something needed to be addressed. I obviously prayed about it, but then I was like just hoping it would go away because I don't really care for doctors. But obviously, when it happened again later that night, I was like, okay, we need to literally go to the doctor. So we made an appointment, went in there, and my blood pressure was skyrocketing. And so obviously they put me on a blood pressure medication, and I thought we're good to go. Let's get right back in the music of life and things like that. It went okay for a couple weeks, but goodness, within, I would say, less than 6 weeks, I started experiencing anxiety that was unusual. It was not, I know anxiety, I'm a mom, I've 5 kids, I know what that is. This was different. And then shortly thereafter, night after night, just no sleep. I just did everything I could, and yet my body just did not sleep. And that's hard. When you're trying to heal and you don't sleep, everything just kind of goes downhill quite quickly. And so obviously I shared that with my primary doctor, and he's like, well, let's get you on an antidepressant. And immediately they also put me on a benzo to be like an instant support for that. And at that point I was pretty ready for just about anything, because when you don't sleep, you want to do something. So I took it, and wow, for the first time, I slept all night. I was like, this is good. Proceeded with it. I took the antidepressant as well, and goodness, it actually made things worse. And so I was like, what am I supposed to do now? So when I went back to my primary doctor, he said, well, we could change your medications. And I was like, was that going to change? Is that going to make anything different? Well, let's give it a shot. And then this time, we're talking going into 3 to 4 months that we were, working with these medications, working with my primary doctor. And I also had started therapy, with counseling. And the reason I did that is because there was a traumatic thing that happened for me at church. And because my upbringing, a lot of us have been told, and I'm sure this would be an identity to a lot of people, is just shove it under the rug. You'll get over it. It's kind of like grieving, time will heal. And so I kept a lot of my pain and my woundedness, just chucked it underneath. And so I'm like, no, it's probably time to address this. And so that turmoil of therapy, acupuncture, exercising, I'm back again with not sleeping. I'm back to having horrible nightmares. And I knew something needed to change. So after Dan, my husband, and I prayed about it, we decided we're going to pursue functional healing. We knew a functional doctor that was a good friend of ours, and so we reached out to him, and he says, yeah, we can help you. And so we did that for a good year. And once again, all of this time I'm still seeking some healing through therapy, through counseling, reaching out to friends, what can I do? And healthy lifestyle became my #1 priority, and exercising, making sure that what I'm eating is working for me. But I think at this point I was also trying to do a lot of this stuff externally. And what I mean by that is on my own. What can Lorene do to fix this? That can work for a season, but there's a time when it has to be like a total inside work where I will look at, where am I broken? What am I not addressing? What am I willing to yield and just lay that down so that I can be healed, body, soul, and spirit? You know what? No. I personally started Googling it a little bit, and against what my kids always said, don't Google, Mom. But I did, and I started thinking, well, maybe this is my problem. And when I did address that to both my primary doctor and the function doctor, it was kind of like, that will be taken care of as time proceeds. Let's not make that a priority right now. Let's get, because there was blood work done with my functional doctor. And so obviously my magnesium levels were off, all of those things. So we were addressing that. And it was kind of like put on the back burner. And so then when I did talk to my primary doctor about it, he says, well, you're not overdosing. You're taking the minimum dose, so you're not going to have too many side effects. And as when the time is right, we'll get you off of them. Honestly, and I'm not going to blame anybody because I'm responsible for my own self. And I wish I would have done a little bit more homework with that, because I had no idea the detriment that will do, even though you're not overdosing. I mean, I never did. I took the least amount that I could do to get by, because I'm not a medication person to begin with, but I had no clue how harsh these were, except I did say to my husband many times, I just don't feel like myself. I felt like I became a different person. So when all of these nightmares started happening again, the anxieties, the fears, the unrealistic experiences that I was having, I really went to the functional doctor and I said, okay, I really need to do something different. What can we do so I can get off of this benzo? We said, okay, we'll taper down on the antidepressant, and then that will make that you could probably just say goodbye to the benzo as well. So I literally was already off of the antidepressant, but the benzo was such a cushiony thing for me. Like anytime I went to a public event or had a speaking engagement, we had a busy life, we were very engaged with things that were happening, I would just take the little benzo and I was good to go. I had energy, but like I said, not feeling like myself, I felt like I could no longer make decisions. I was always confused. I had brain fog. There were other symptoms in my body, like I would get tremors, and that just wouldn't stop. And I was like, I can't blame it on anything else by now, except this benzo. Primary doctor told me, all you need to do is just stop taking it. So I did. I just stopped. 2 days, which was about 48 hours. I literally thought I was going to die. It was the worst, horrible experience I have ever had. So I called my primary doctor and he said, well, you probably should maybe go to like a psych hospital. Is that how you say it? And that kind of scared me. I was like, I don't want to go there, So I talked to my functional doctor and he says, how about we do some herbs? Let's, introduce some herbs into your body, and then that'll help you, get rid of your benzo. So we did that. Funny thing is the weekend that we decided to do this, we already had planned to go to Pennsylvania to see some family. And nobody told me, and I had asked specifically, is there going to be any side effects I should be concerned about? No, he said, you'll be fine. I get there, and now here I am with a new protocol, and it went downhill. It was a harsh weekend. I was nervous, food didn't have taste. I was, it felt like the world was caving in, and I literally wanted to just hide. I just take me to a hotel. But even then when I was at the hotel, it wasn't comfortable. It felt like little wiggly worms were crawling all over my body inside of me. And then I would have this like an electric shock in my brain. And I literally thought my head's gonna pop off. And obviously it's a weekend, so I'm not able to call the functional doctor, but seriously, when I got back Monday, I was like, something's not right here. So they said, well, let's put you back on an antidepressant again and see if that works. So we went back on an antidepressant for a week, and that didn't do nothing. In fact, it made things worse. Call that day is when my functional doctor said, which is a word that probably none of us want to hear, but many people have heard this word, there's nothing more we can do for you. Those are hard words, but I know, as I'm sharing this, I know because I've had friends that have heard that with other, diseases, health, concerns and stuff like that. I'm not the only one that has gotten that call, but I'm sitting on my chair just thinking, is this the end for me? And she suggested seeing a psychiatrist. So that very same day, I called a psychiatrist, and she's like, oh yeah, we can do this. We're just gonna stop this benzo today, and we're gonna put you over to an SSRI. So I did. And here again, we're talking now, this was a week but before I got my psychiatrist, and now I'm ready to go to my daughter's house and no benzo. And you think about it, now it's a year that I'm on this benzo, and it's in my purse, it's in my pocket, I never left the house without it. So yes, I was dependent on it. And all of a sudden I'm supposed to stop cold turkey on this thing and switch over to an SSRI. And I'm sitting there on the couch at my daughter's house thinking, this is how it's going to be. And that was the worst day in my life. That was the day when I was just sitting there and I couldn't breathe. Like the oxygen just left my body. And I literally went outside just to get fresh air. And I begged my husband, I said, just let me die. This is the only thing I know what to do at this point, because I'm done trying. And this obviously is not working either. You know, when you go through primary doctors, you go through your functional doctor, and now you're at a strange psychiatrist and they're saying just stop. And so of course I had to wait till Monday to talk to her because it's a weekend. But I crushed, I fell apart because my body vibrated. And sometimes my husband could probably explain more because it was hard. You know, you kind of have a brain fog, you don't really know what you're doing and saying. But it just felt like everything, like dizziness was the worst probably. And so you get shaky, the tremors and stuff like that. But I just went back and took the benzo again that day because I didn't know what else to do because I couldn't communicate with anybody. So come Monday, I called the psychiatrist and I said, I don't think this is going to work. And she said, yes, it is. I promise you, you're going to make it. Just keep doing what you are. And I said, you really want me just to never take this benzo again? That is correct. So the following weekend, we were going to go on an anniversary trip to Georgia. I put all my confidence in what I was promised, and away we go. Pretty much wasted that trip because now I'm out of state, and all I have is an SSRI and no longer this benzo that was in my bloodstream, and the chemistry it did to my brain was not there anymore. And my brain was like, where is my benzo? And I'm a believer. I prayed like I've never prayed before. I sweated bucket loads. My bed was so wet from sweating, because I think it was just cleansing me from not having that anymore. Well, I get on and I was like, now we're gonna Google. And I called my daughter and she's on helping me. She said, we're gonna get through this, but we're gonna have to figure out something because this is, to be honest, it was hell on earth. And I began to realize that doctors do not know what a person goes through. They're not trained and equipped, and I'm not blaming doctors. It's the big pharma. They have this available for people. It's easy for them to prescribe it, but until they walk in our shoes, and I did ask both my doctor and the psychiatrist, have you ever experienced this? No, but we just know people that do, and you're gonna get through it. So I did the best I could with it, but things did not change. We're right back again to not able to function. I had to cancel every event that I had planned. I'm a planner, I'm a people person. I could no longer be with people. My biggest, hardest thing that I ever went through is I couldn't be with my children. And that's not right, because I love my children. And I was like, how can this be a God thing? So I was tempted many times just to stop taking it. It's not working anyway, but I didn't. I honored my psychiatrist. I honored, what people were trying to help me out with. But in the back of my mind, I was like, something has got to change. And I started just doing tons of research. And I was like, surely somebody survived. I did join some benzo groups on Facebook. There's a positive and a negative to that. I will say there's some good groups out there. The one I love is called Life After Benzos. I was like, that should be positive. And it was. I met a pretty neat guy that really supported me and encouraged me and promised me that I will get on the other side of this. And I would cling to text messages and love from my husband and my kids. That's what got me through. You really want to have a support system, someone that believes with you, because you cannot make any logic decisions at this point. The positive thing about hanging out with people that survived it is what encouraged me. I would live for that, and it's like, if other people can do this, I can do this as well. And I realized there's people that get lost in the shuffle with this, and they have cried out for help, and they haven't found answers. And I always promised myself, once I get through this, that I will be a voice and let people know you can survive and you can get through this. And I would often have pictures of my grandchildren on my phone, and I would just sit there, pray for my grandchildren, and say, one day, Grandma will be the real Grandma again. And that commitment to myself is what would make me get up again out of the bed and go for it again. And by now, I'm on juicing. I don't eat sugar anymore. I should have been as healthy as ever, but it was this little, SSRI that, was still in my brain, still in my bloodstream, still causing me nightmares, still causing me the tremor, still causing me, I don't want to be with people. And so I had read about a very unique ancient therapy. And in my brain, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that one. That's a little bit far out there. But I was like, what else have I got to try? And Dan was sometimes, concerned just like I was. And here again, I can just say, night after night, we would pray together, cry together, and just know that somehow there's got to be a solution to this. And then I did miss watching and helping my one daughter have her miracle baby, just because at that time I was going through the heaviest of my withdrawals, and I couldn't function. I was good if I could get out of bed. And so that was a lot of guilt, a lot of shame through that time. But what was coming up right around the corner was my other daughter's wedding. And I promised her I would be at that wedding. And I was like, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. But if whatever it takes, But I said, God, you're going to give me an answer. I know you will. So another dear girlfriend of mine reached out from Colorado, and she said, I think if you follow this ancient therapy, you're going to be able to be at your daughter's wedding. And mind you, it was like 7 days before the wedding. And I'm like, well, this has got to be a pretty good ancient therapy then, if it's going to do that. Because now we're 2 years into all of this detoxing, tapering off, all of those things. But I said, what have I to lose? And this ancient therapy is called urine therapy. So I did it. What have I got to lose? I did it, and I was at my daughter's wedding. And I knew that day that I'm going to get out of this. Now I'm 90 days into this therapy, and I'm off of my medications. I feel like a human being again. I'm so excited about what is in front of me. I feel like all of my yesterdays are erased. I have very little memory, and I'm so grateful for this, of the horribleness of it. And it's just because the journals, sometimes I'll just peek back there and it's like, oh yeah, that was kind of harsh. But I feel like all of that brain fog is erased. All of that, I don't have nightmares anymore. There's a love for myself that is so strong. And I remember particularly that was one thing that David Powers had shared with me, is you will become stronger afterwards than you were even prior to being on a benzo. And I clung onto that, and now I'm here to say that is absolutely true. I am more persuaded of who I am in Christ than I ever have been before. And I have a love for people that I've never had before. And it has created in me that desire to be a healer, that I can help make a difference for other people. So my encouragement is, take what you have, whatever has happened to you. Reach out until you find that solution for whatever that is. It may not be what I have. I know this is what worked for me, but I can never, ever underestimate the power of love and support from family and people that have an identity with you. And if you ever feel like you have something that you want to share with people, don't be quiet. Because you know what? That's what got me to where I'm at today. Did we ever have arguments? Absolutely, because it's a stressful time, so your character gets tested to the hilt. And what I knew in my gut is Dan would never walk away from me, But I think I asked him hundreds of times, are you going to leave me? Because I'm under the impression now that I know what I know now. This is where a lot of marriages break up. This is where a lot of families walk away from their, hurting members, because a person does change when they're on a benzo, no doubt. So you become a person that nobody knows. So that's a scary place. But it's the last thing that you want to have happen is people walking out of your life. So in that darkest places is when you really want to just yield into your identity of who you are as, your divine creator who made you. And that's what Dan and I would do, is we would often just, crumble into the hands of our maker and say, you be our guide through this. And he was not so much the researcher. I had great kids that did that for us. So they would say, okay, this is what you can maybe expect now. Then there is no timetable for this. For some people, they can do it in 3 months. Some people, it takes 3 years. I have found out people that are 30 plus years into it. The ones I love the most were when they were just simple with, I love you, and I believe in you, I believe with you. So it's not about fancy words, and it was so neat how it was just like synchronicities would come about for the text came at the proper time. It was just like you would cry out to God and there would be this butterfly, and I was just like, there's God, and I would just feel like that was a kiss from heaven for me. It's the simple things again that, were so beautiful. And, I know my kids often thought they weren't doing it good enough, but I clung to everyone, that every little text that would come or every little call, and I would visualize. I did a lot of, meditation. I would visualize playing with my grandkids again. And that's how I would fall asleep, is dreaming and imagining myself having that energy to play again. I love volleyball. I haven't played volleyball in 2 years, so I'm like, I want to play volleyball again. So, and here again, I would, give kudos to my kids for that, because they did some research and said, how can the family best support someone that's going through that? And that was communicated among my children and my husband, so that they didn't understand, because nobody walks in your shoes, but they tried the best they knew at that point. And it's not about puking all of the darkness that you have at that point, but enough for them that compassion will, arise. And I felt that was definitely a gift that I was given, when my children, because they were like, I was like, how did you know what to say? And they were like, well, we were kind of told what not to say and what to say, And so that's a huge thing, is if someone's going through this, have someone communicate with your family what is best to support them. And there's definitely some great resources out there for that as well. Definitely plant-based. Nothing, just some things that are living foods is what worked best. And I still think that was part of my healing, was when I was eating things that were from the garden, things that are from nature, versus, like anytime you do refined sugar, that just literally buzzes the benzo even more. And so definitely, I would highly, highly encourage anybody. And then exercising and meditating and, getting connected with one source, which is God. And so I can, here again, there's people that they can eat anything. I'm just the kind that it seemed like the minute I would do something like that, I would just crumble again. So I actually had no desire for it at that point, because I was so desperate to be healed. Never, ever give up. As long as there's breath, there's life, there's hope. And just keep going, even if it's tiny increment steps. And you're going to have those waves and those windows. There's times I had 3 good weeks and I'm like, I'm good to go. And then I'd have that wave, that bump. And you just kind of want to throw in the towel, but you just celebrate all of those victories. And the best support, like I said earlier, is include your family. Probably if I could do that again, is include my family a little bit more. I'm a private person, So I don't want to burden anybody. So I would just, hide those things. And probably in hindsight, I would just say, you know what, pick up the phone and say, I'm having a crappy day today.